Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another panel discussion with the Pofficators here on the Solano College Sports Network. I'm Josh Kinder with Isabel Medina, Marge Stoner, Nancy Salcedo, and Rachel Cohen. Now, Rachel, why did you guys choose this topic, Power to the People?
Well, for this presentation at first, we weren't really sure what we wanted to do, and we were kind of like racking our brains and thinking, what are we going to talk about? And in our last presentation, towards the end of it, we were talking about Canvas and how we spoke to a woman by the name of Erica Beam. And she's this higher up position, don't see her very much because of where she works and who she is. And we thought we wouldn't be able to talk to her. She's this big person and we're just students. And that got us on the subject of, well, if we thought we couldn't talk to her, then maybe there's other people out there that think that they can't talk to, maybe not her, but other important people. And that's where we kind of came up with this, this power to the people, this speaking up topic.
And what does that mean, speaking up?
I think it just means voicing your opinion.
Yeah, it means finding the courage to speak up, to talking to your professors, to your teachers, to students. When you don't like something, when you see something's wrong, or you want to see a change, that's when you should speak up.
And then, so can you guys give me some situations, where you can speak up? Let's maybe start with school.
In a situation where you can speak up is where you don't like how the teacher is maybe teaching something, or you don't like how certain things is being done in the class. You can speak up and talk to your teacher and be like, hey, I wish you could do this differently, or wish this could change. And it's good for you to go and talk to them and speak to them.
And then Marge, what about in the work?
For work, for my job, which I do besides going to school, is I'm part of a scheduling committee, and we follow our work protocol when we make the schedule. We follow that exactly to verbatim to keep us out of trouble. Our new manager sees fit to kind of go around the system. So even though it's uncomfortable for us as a committee to say something, we kind of say, hey, we're breaking the rules that way. We can't do that. So it's uncomfortable for us, but we say something because it's wrong. It's not because we just do what we're told by a manager. So in that situation, we have to say something. If not, it's detrimental to our department, the function of our department, and for everybody if we don't speak up.
And then what about an everyday life situation?
And I mean, most things we talked about were in work and school previously, but in everyday life, it's just any type of situation that you personally feel uncomfortable with. So whether it's, you're out with your friends and, there's drinking and driving involved, you want to be that person that says, yes, I'm uncomfortable with this, and voice your opinion and say, you can't do that. Or even on a bigger scale, like in politics now and in Hollywood, there's all these sex scandals coming out. And in someone else's everyday life, maybe not your own, they were dealing with this issue of, should I speak up or should I not speak up? And now that there's that one person that spoke up, it's just this chain reaction where everybody, because of that one person who did speak up, they feel this courage and confidence where they can say, yes, this happened to me too, and they have this newfound courage just because that one person, which could be you, just to speak up, whether it is in your everyday life or in work or in school, to say that this is wrong and say why it's wrong and not be afraid to say why it's wrong.
And then how about situational wise? So let's say we have one for work, we have one for everyday life, but for school and being in college, what are maybe some benefits for speaking up, and then maybe what is the consequences for not speaking up that any of you guys could come up with? Nancy?
Some consequences where you should speak up is where
it's where if you don't speak, you're speaking up, if you put yourself out there and actually ask, then you're not the only person, because I think most of us sometimes sit in class and we just take what our teachers tell us for its face value, even though we sometimes have a question, an example would be our grades, or a presentation, we're kind of all like, what did you say? And then none of us ask, and then one person will finally have the courage and say, hey, professor, what did you say? And then they're like, oh, because I think every person here at Solano, that will happen in any class if we don't ask that one question. One of the things I'll use as an example is my biology, or my anatomy class. our teacher will be talking, we're all kind of like, what? And then my class would be like, what? And I'm like, we need to just ask them, like, who's going to ask? Who's going to ask? And it's kind of like,
It's kind of like you're scared. You're like,
luckily, like
who
my
should be the
classmate, she's
one?
just
Yeah.
like, professor, and they're like, what of you guys wanted to know that too, huh? So it's asking is a benefit, and then you realize everybody else has that same question.
Yeah, I think it's more when you're talking in a classroom setting, 9 times out of 10, you're not the only one that has that question. So it's like not only is it asking a question beneficial for yourself, but it's super beneficial for also your other classmates, because it's like you're not going to be the only one that's wondering, okay, wait, didn't we have a test today? Or is there going to be a test or a pop quiz or anything like that? There's always, if a student is paying attention in class, they are probably going to have the exact same question that you are going to ask. And it just kind of like gets over that whole situation of fear and asking, and that leads up to my next question. How do you get over the fear of asking?
I think it's hard. It's sometimes it takes the rest of your classmates to help you, or finding that person in your class. I think one of the things with us here is we're learning that to not be afraid to ask, or don't feel like you're the stupid one by asking. It's just kind of getting over that fear.
And also, don't think that your opinion is dumb, or don't think that what you're thinking of is, not relevant or anything, because, it does matter what you say. Your opinion does matter, and you should speak of what you're thinking of. So,
I think personally, like, if you wanted to talk to someone else first, like you had like a trusted friend or even like mom or dad, and just say, I have this issue at work, or I have this issue at school, can I run it by you? And just kind of like, if you were to practice for a speech, you say, here, like, look at my paper and I'll recite it to you. It's just kind of like a practice run, basically. Just like how, we practice for this, you ask the questions and we just answer. It's just like that. You go just to get somebody else's opinion and know that, okay, I'm a little more confident now, because now you know what you're going to say, instead of just going in blindly and you think you're like, well, I can kind of do this, but you're nervous because you don't know what to say, and then on top of those nerves, you're nervous because you're talking to this big person, and then you get even more nervous because you're like, oh my god, like I'm gonna start to stutter or jumble my words. And just to have that little pre-planning, it goes a long way as to kind of putting that fear at a lower level.
I feel like I agree with Nancy when she said that you shouldn't be scared to speak up. A lot of times I see it on social media. I see a lot of kids like getting bullied, and they can't speak up for themselves. And sometimes you have to be the bigger person, whether you know the person or not, speak up, because it's not right.
Yeah, I think speaking up is just something that is something that needs to be addressed, just not in school, but in society as a whole. But there's always that fear of, like, what if someone makes fun of me for speaking up or anything like that. But I've gone by the motto my entire life: you only regret the questions that you don't ask. So if you ask those questions, you're actually kind of find out. The worst they can say is no, or they'll give you maybe a different alternative. Because that's one thing that I've seen a lot in this, just being in college and with professors, and Pav's great at this. If like you ask a question and he doesn't necessarily get it, he can steer that question into the right path. And it's kind of just makes more sense, and it's more clear and concise, because sometimes professors are there for you. That's why they're here, is in order for them to help you understand where they're going and understand the situation. Like, that's why they have office hours, and that's, I think, one thing that is us as students' fault, because not a lot of us take advantage of it. But when I've taken advantage of it a few times, and I've never regretted it yet, just because they are there for you. They want you to succeed, and all it just takes is that first initiative of stepping out, speaking up, and then literally your whole world is like open.
It's like finding your voice to say something. It's their path is to help you, but you have to take that initiative as a person, as a college student, even as a person if you're not here, to be able to take that initial step and say, hey, I need help, or is this what I need? But it can't be spoon-fed. It's learning how to do it on your own, and knowing there's people there to help.
And earlier you said, what if someone makes fun of me for, speaking up? Well, previously we had talked about, what if you had asked the question? And I think that's a bigger thing that weighs on your mind, because you're in this limbo, like, is it a yes or is it a no? And if you don't ask that question, you're always going to wonder, like, what if they did say yes, this could have happened? Or what if they did say no, and this also could have happened? So just don't be afraid to ask the question, because you may think, no, I can't, but you'll never know if you don't ask.
It could be the yes that you're actually wanting to hear.
Yeah.
Just don't be afraid
just
to
don't know.
actually say something, put your voice out there and ask.
Yes.
Don't assume you know the answer when you actually haven't asked it.
And that's all the time we have for the first segment. We'll be right back with the second segment, where we're getting into what we personally learned here in this class and how we can apply it to our daily lives. Be right back.
The exponential growth from the program from my first year to my third year now, that's what keeps me coming back and keeps me excited and just like fulfills me as a person.
I've been taking classes here for years now, so I've never actually had a class that I enjoyed quite like this one.
You know, I think it teaches you a lot about, it's confidence building to me.
It's so impressive, and we every time we walk in here, you guys are doing something different. It's great. It's great.
Nothing but opportunities here, and we have sports to cover, we have the equipment.
Because the more ambitious you are, the more opportunities you'll have. And POF with this program lets you be as ambitious as you want and lets you express yourself the way a teacher should let you.
So, like I said, it's really gratifying to us to be able to help in a way where we can see immediate results. And I think the sky's the limit, really, with what we can do here.
Get the hands-on experience.
I mean, on-the-job training is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge in this industry.
Joining the class was the best decision I ever made.
Cut three, hold the shot. Stand by, we're going to go to cut one. And cut one.
And welcome back. In the first segment, we talked about how we came up with this topic and different situations where students or just people in general can speak up. Now we're going to talk about what we learned in this class and how we can apply it to our daily lives. Rachel, so what did you learn?
I learned in the very beginning of this class, we talked about ways to argue. And there was about 5 different ways where you either, gain everything and the other person loses, or you lose and they gain everything, or there was like this sort of compromise where it's a give and take. And I think that I learned not to compromise so much, because there's certain things where you really want and you really need this, but there's that other person that's like, well, that's not important, or they say, well, what I have here is more important. And I think I just learned to be able to stand my ground and say, okay, that may be your opinion, but what I have here, I not only want, but I need, and just to be able to not give up so easily.
I personally have found the courage to speak up and to not be afraid, to ask a question to my teacher, to say a comment that I want to see change or anything. So I found the courage in myself to speak up and be a good communicator.
I've learned to kind of really listen. One of the terms that we learned in class was turn off the yammy. That was our teacher's term, and it kind of makes sense, because sometimes when you think you're listening to people, but you have thoughts in the back of your head and you're not really paying attention. I've learned to try to really turn that off or minimize that, so I can hear what I'm being told by my classmates or my coworkers, and to really try to understand their viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I also too learned to be a good listener and listen to my colleagues, because if I didn't, I feel like our first segment would have been like a lot less. Like, I just feel like 5 minds was better than 1, and that's why we had such a strong segment, because we had great ideas.
And then, give me a situation on how you can apply, let's say, like being a good listener in your normal life, if it's either in a relationship, social life, friends, family, or work or school.
Well, I feel like I've had like someone be a good listener to me and hear me out. for the longest time I was like in a relationship where it wasn't like the best, and I kind of just was closed-minded, and I didn't felt like I can be open to anybody, and I was just like trapped. But once I started to like tell people my business, like they started to like open up to me and like let me know like it wasn't okay, and like after a while I finally got to like, I feel like I just freed myself. Like I started doing better mentally, physically. Like it was just a lot better when you have a good listener.
Marsh?
Yeah, it goes back to listening. One of the things I think we'll all learn as we get older in time is listening, because you'll get to your own routine in life as you get older, and whatever you're doing in school, work, you get to your set routine, and sometimes you think you're listening, but you're not. So that's something this has helped me with, is to really open up again and listen to people instead of, yeah, I heard you, but you don't really actually listen. It's really, truly listening to people and trying to understand them is what's helped me, and what I do practice now.
Yeah. For me, it's been with my friends. I've found the courage in myself to not always just agree with what they say, but sometimes be like, okay, sorry, I don't think that's right. You know, you shouldn't do this, and communicate to them like what I would want to see change or what I don't like about them, not just agree and be like, okay, just whatever. So I have found that helpful.
I think also along the lines of friends, it's like to be able to hear what they're saying, but also hear what they're not saying. So to be able to pay attention to how they're saying it, and you know, maybe like their tone in their voice, or like the nonverbal communication that you see, just to know, like, to be able to, you know, really listen and pay attention. You know that, okay, they're talking like about something really happy right now, but you know that they're not happy. And just once you start to really pay attention, you pick up on those small things that you should have been picking up on earlier if you really were a good listener and a good friend.
Yeah.
And what would you tell someone that's like maybe struggling to speak up? Like how we kind of talked about fear in the first segment. Let's dive in like just a little bit more deeper, but what are some advice that you would give someone? So it's like they're in any situation. It could either be with your majors, like how your early childhood development, like where you have maybe a parent that is completely just being who knows what, because we all know parents are unpredictable. But like, what are some like situations and advice that you could give someone?
I'd say this goes back to good listening. Be able to present your point, but also see where the other person is coming from, because you may not know, you know, what's going on in their life that has put them in this situation, whether they're in like this frustrated mood or angry mood, you know, or whether they're in this mood where they're just so upset and depressed. You don't know what's going on in their life, and you just need to learn to take into consideration the other person and be able to get your point across, but also pay attention to them. So don't just make it about yourself and say, you know, it's my way or the highway and it has to be like this, but be able to listen to them and what they have to say.
I feel like people should know that speaking up doesn't necessarily mean standing up and telling the person that they're wrong. There's like other ways you can speak up. You can speak up anonymously. You can speak up in a whole bunch of different ways. And I feel like some people, because some people really can't just get up and speak their mind, because of there's like people that have been in like abusive relationships. If they speak up, something might happen, like, and they don't have the strength. So people should know that you don't literally have to get up and speak up for you to speak up.
It doesn't have to be confrontational. Don't remind people. You can speak up in many different ways, but it doesn't have to be confrontational. It doesn't have to be aggressive, but just making it known how you feel or what you think, and listening to other people makes a difference. Is caring about each other, yet again, which I think sometimes in our society we're starting to lose now. But if we remind people that's something we need to do, as human beings, it might still make a difference.
I think it goes down just along the lines of just like when you're trying to get over that fear of speaking up, or even just like getting to speak up, it, as Margie said, it doesn't have to be confrontational. A lot of things can just be compromising, or just there's so many different ways, and it almost seems like confrontation and just making it my way or the highway is starting to become the norm, and that's where everything just becomes so prideful and selfish, and that's not what we want here at all. And I think once people realize that there all are alternative ways and routes that you can take to get to a decision without getting much strife or confrontation, everything is just going to run so much more smoothly.
Yeah.
And that's all the time that we have for today. For the Pofficators, I'm Josh Kinder, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.